Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this very special program today. I'm Sania Elamine, Barnard class of 2016 and current chair of the Barnard Young Alumni Committee. On behalf of our committee, we just want to say that we're so excited to bring you this event this evening, and thanks so much for joining. The Young Alum Committee plans programs designed to bring young alums together to foster friendship, connections, and a shared sense of purpose and commitment to the college. Before we dive into the event, I just want to let you know a few things. You will not have microphone or camera access during this online event. Your voices, likenesses, and images will not be captured by Barnard College, and written submission of questions may be shared during the Q&A portion of the event. If at any point you think of a question, feel free to submit it using the Q&A feature, and we will feature it during the Q&A time at the end of the program. I'm so excited to be moderating the conversation today. For those of you that don't know, I work in product development at MasterCard and also run my own business, Finance, where I teach others how to live debt-free, save for travel, and build wealth. As chair of the Young Alum Committee and an educator on on education, I'm so thrilled to be part of this conversation and also part in part with some of my classmates and sisters in this community. And so happy that we could bring this content to you at such a timely and meaningful time for us. So now I have the privilege of introducing our incredible experts, our panelists, PJ Douglas Sands, Caroline Siniza Levine, and Gianni Latange. First, I'll start by introducing Caroline. Caroline Siniza Levine is Barnard class of 1993 and is a career and small business expert, leadership coach, and media personality. Caroline has been a repeat guest on CBS, CNN, CNBC, and Fox Business, and has been quoted in major media outlets, including Business Week, Entrepreneur, Fast Company, Fortune, Inc., and Success Magazine. As senior contributor to Forbes.com, Caroline formerly wrote for Money.com, CNBC, and Portfolio. Caroline teaches professional development and negotiation courses at Columbia University and is the co-founder of Six Figure Start, Career Coaching, and Costa Rica Fire, a travel, real estate, and personal finance site. Prior to starting her own firms, Caroline spent 15 years in strategy consulting, retained executive search, and HR. Welcome, Caroline.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yes. Next, I'll introduce Gianni Latange, one of my fellow classmates, Barnard class of 2016. Gianni is head muse and creator of First Gen Money Musings, a strategy and inspiration platform for first generation wealth builders manifesting financial freedom in alignment with their greatest selves on their terms. Gianni shares her personal finance journey openly while providing action-oriented content to help fellow exceptionally diverse wealth builders level up and access the life most meant for them. Welcome, Gianni.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here tonight.
Yes. And last but certainly not least, PJ Douglas Sands, Barnard class of 1998. PJ currently serves as the chair of the Regional Clubs and Networks Committee, as well as the president of the Barnard Club of Houston. As a travel, wealth, and tourism strategist, PJ is the CEO of DS3 Global Strategies and MoneyWorks Financial. PJ has helped launch over 150 businesses and brands in 22 countries, running successful campaigns for clients like the Bahamas Tourism Board, the US Virgin Islands Tourism Boards as well. Her work has been featured in Vanity Fair, Town and Country magazine, and on CBS and NBC. As a licensed financial educator, PJ focuses on financial education, organizational restructuring, business development, new media and marketing strategies for individuals, small and medium-sized businesses, and hospitality-related organizations, including tourism boards and hotels. She is committed to helping people move from financial illiteracy to becoming their own money managers focused on building generational wealth. Welcome, PJ.
Thank you. So glad to be here.
Yeah, so as you can see, our three panelists bring such a wealth of knowledge to the subject matter. So I'm so excited to be in conversation with them. So let's just dive right in, right? The purpose of our event today is we're talking about how can we thrive in periods of uncertainty, right? There's so much uncertainty happening in the world, happening in our country. So to start us off, I would love to hear from all of our panelists. What are some useful first steps, whether that be in terms of mental health, financial, the way that we can live our lives, that everyone can use when life throws an unexpected curveball at you, like a life change, whether that's being furloughed or needing to change locations? I would love to hear from all of our panelists on how you think we can think about just navigating through change.
Do you want to call on us or should we just jump
Yeah,
in?
Caroline, yeah,
Okay.
please start us off.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to talk career because I'm surrounded by finance and lifestyle gurus, and I'll let you guys take that. But from a career perspective, I would just remind people that people get hired in up and down markets. People get hired in the last month of the year. Sometimes there are these urban legends that abound. Say, oh, no one's hiring, or double-digit employment, and you can get easily discouraged looking at employment statistics. And I just remind people that stop looking at those statistics. Your unemployment rate is 0 or 100%, and so if you're not employed right now, recognize that people are getting hired and you have to just focus on yourself and on that one job. And obviously help people along the way, but don't feel like you have to somehow change the unemployment rate for everybody, right? It's really just about you at this point.
Mhm. I would definitely love to say that I think mental health is such a big deal. I think, sometimes being at Barnard, we're so used to being at the top. We came in because we were at the top, and sometimes we just have to remember that there are also people that have it worse. Thank goodness for what we have and the blessings that we have, and also to not be so hard on ourselves and to really take a look and inventory what's going on and really embrace, take some self-care. That would definitely be my first step.
What about you? I think you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry. I'm just going to leave it off mute for the duration of the meeting. I apologize about that. But yeah, just to piggyback on some of what was said, I would definitely emphasize the self and the spiritual, because I feel like it really does start in the mind when you're, regardless of what sort of challenge you might be facing. And, we all have different experiences as to how those things feel for ourselves. So we can't compare ourselves to one another. We really have to find that sort of strength and power that works best for us as we're navigating these things. And of course, like being strategic, thinking of things through an abundance mindset, especially in this day and age where we have the beauty of technology, where there are a lot of free resources available, such as podcasts. You just got to pop that sucker on. You already listening to music or whatever for a good amount of the day. Let's just switch it up to something that can help you be really action oriented and create those new realities that you just deserve to feel more grounded.
Oh, wow, I love that, Gianni. Thank you. So, what I love about the commonalities between really all of our platforms, but especially the three of you as our panelists, is that in each of your respective lanes, you're talking about wealth building. You're talking about how folks can move towards more financial freedom. So, I want to hear from all of you again. What is one tool that is an imperative that we all have as part of our life or financial toolkit? And Caroline, let's start with you again.
Yeah. So again, sticking to the career issue, I think something that we forget about, our ability to earn is for many people the biggest asset that we have. You are going to earn, over a million, maybe multi-millions in your lifetime when you really, really add up how much you're earning every year. And so of course, and I'll leave it to the finance experts to talk about how to save that, how to invest that, and those types of money habits. But from a career perspective, you want to be thinking about preserving that ability to earn. And so what does that mean? I think the one thing that I would say, because there are a lot of things, but I think the one thing that I would point out is that your personal brand. So how you show up in the world, what people know about you, what people think is your superpower, that is something that you should be nurturing and cultivating at all times. It goes beyond your resume. So your resume is something for sure. It includes your online profile like LinkedIn. It includes your social media activity. So things that you're posting and commenting. It also includes, how you dress, how you speak. It includes how you talk about yourself to other people so that when they go away and refer you, so your networking pitch, your elevator pitch, that's part of your brand. And so really think about how you're showing up. Do people know what you do, what you're interested in, what your value is? And would they feel comfortable referring you for opportunities and leads? And that really is going to help you, obviously financially, because your ability to earn is your asset.
I
Wow,
agree
thank you.
with you, Caroline. And definitely, I feel for me, one tool that's definitely imperative on the financial side would be an emergency fund. Oftentimes, we know so many people right now in this climate that didn't realize that tomorrow or today is going to be their last day at work. Or they started a business and they thought it was such a great idea. And on March 17th, March 20th, their business changed. So I feel like one of the key pieces that you can do from day one is to build an emergency fund, is to really concentrate on, 3 to 6 months of your expenses, keeping that accumulated. And you can start as low as $10 a day and really setting that aside in order to be able to make that goal, because the vast majority of Americans today don't even have $500 for an emergency and are living on credit cards. And you have to think about, it's not how much you make, but how much you keep. So you want to definitely make your money, save your money, grow your money, and protect your money, and really set aside an emergency fund. And if you don't have one, really start implementing several day strategies, easy strategies, in order to start that emergency fund.
That's great.
Yeah, those are all amazing points. I would just say to really make yourself aware of the resources that are available to you when it comes to financially organizing yourself and optimizing your finances, because there are different things that can work for all of us. Um, to piggyback off the point about the emergency fund, a lot of people don't realize that you can actually start saving for your emergency fund through tax advantage investment accounts. So ones that are available through a company that you might work for, like a 401k or a 403b, in addition to something that doesn't require an employer, such as a Roth IRA. This way, your money gets to earn some interest by being active in the stock market. And the reason why I mentioned those connected to an emergency fund is because in emergency times, you are able to withdraw. Now, some people argue against withdrawing from a retirement account, but depending on your age and I feel like your financial priorities, why not? It's your money and it's earning significantly more interest on average than what would be in a high yield savings account. So right now, high yield savings account are going for under 2% annual percentage earnings, whereas on the stock market, a conservative estimate is around 6% of growth per year. So even if you do have to pull, you're making that money way faster than just putting it in a traditional savings account. Of course, have some money separate from that as well, right? If you can manage it. But really, there's such a wealth of resources. And something that I want to quickly touch on for folks who may have experienced unemployment, but was able to collect unemployment because we pay taxes into that, right? Don't necessarily be in a rush to re-enter the job market, because I think that you can invest that money in yourself if you have those means, especially given so much of work right now is remote. So if you can use that time period to move to a more affordable area and invest in yourself intellectually, build those money-making assets and skill sets up for you to re-enter the job force on a really strong foot. And that's actually something that I'm doing right now, just as far as using this time where many of us are able to work remote to learn software engineering skills that helps me to make that career pivot that I've been seeking.
Wow, that was awesome. Thank you all for that. So let's kind of switch gears a little. One way that we can think about thriving in times of uncertainty is also setting and staying accountable to our financial goals that we have for ourselves. So PJ, I want to start with you as a licensed financial educator. What advice do you have for us on really building a secure foundation, especially in times of uncertainty or periods of recession where just things might be a little bit up in the air?
Well, I love the word foundation because there's nothing like thinking of your life as a financial house. It's like building a house from the ground up. So when I think of a proper financial foundation, I often think about the fact that I want to start it at the ground with protection. So that is your foundation. That is the base of your home. You want to protect your family, your life, whether it's health, disability. You want to reduce your liabilities and deal with debt management, which would be the ground floor, right above that. Because when it comes to debt, so many of us don't realize how much money that we are spending. I think of in finance, they have the rule of 72, which was a theory come about by Albert Einstein, which when you take that interest rate and you divide it by 72, and you think about all of the interest that you are paying out. So the faster that you can reduce that debt, whether it's your student loan debt, your mortgage, your car, then that allows you to be able to get out of debt sooner and reduce those liabilities. Oftentimes people think of a home, oh, that's an asset. But if you owe on that, that's really a liability. So is a car. If you owe on that, it's a liability, not an asset. And then if you want to deal with constant changes in your job or your career or even your business, you also want to think as you move up to that third layer, which is an emergency fund. And you want to make sure that you can live a long life and you want to have adequate income. If you live long, you want to have also invested. Many of the things that Gianni mentioned when you're talking about tax advantage options like your Roth IRA or your 529 college savings plan for people who are saving for their kids, or even your health savings account, which you might have started at work, or life insurance. And then you think of things that maybe are taxed later. And so often people don't think of things like a SEP IRA if you own a business where you can put up to $57,000 a year away till when you're 59 and a half. People think that you're just going to put your money on a tax now account, like your checking or your savings. You might as well be putting it under your bed because you're getting 0.00001%. So I love what Gianni shared about being able to find a high yield savings account to be able to start that investment and to be safe about it. Because, as you want to make sure that it's not about how much you make, but how much you keep, and that making sure that that proper financial foundation is set. So I definitely would encourage people to look at those, because if you start with investing and you've invested a bunch and then the market collapsed, then what are you going to fall back on? You want to make sure that you started with that protection and you start looking at things at a young age, like even long-term care, which is something that as you think of your aging parents that you might be helping and stuck in the middle, or thinking of, those siblings that might be needing your help. So if you put money and invest money while we're young and healthy in order to create these types of strategies, then as you live longer, you don't have as much to worry about because you have put in that foundation. So I would definitely feel like with a recession, a lot of people were watching their cannabis stocks and all of the different stocks that, once the election happened, some things rose, some things fell. But you also want to think of things like index strategies, even where they are a little bit safer and not as, when you're talking about risk, you're not as high risk. We have people from different age groups on our call today. And depending on your age, you want to think about how much risk you're willing to take in order to have that proper foundation. So I think that's a key component of being able to do that. And you're never too old to start with that financial foundation, because a lot of us wish we knew what we should have known when we were younger. But now you can start at any time, really getting prepared and moving for that next step.
Wow, that was awesome, PJ. Thank you so much for that. So Gianni, the next question is for you. Love having you on the panel because you are a fellow young alum who has done some incredible things in moments of uncertainty around your financial goals. And let's just be honest, sometimes financial goals like going to graduate school or buying a home or other things to invest in yourself and your future sometimes we don't have the money outright to do those things, and we have to kind of turn to loans and other form of financing to get those things. So from your perspective as someone who is a young wealth builder, a property owner, right? What are some major things that we should consider when we're taking out loans for any of our financial goals?
Thank you, Cinia. That's a great question because I I love to move unafraid by debt, to be honest, and to see its wealth building utility. So I think that it's so important to really decide what value is this debt going to add to your life. And also it comes from a place of confidence in yourself that like you're going to put in the work to make the money that can pay back off that debt or really make taking on the debt worthwhile. So a few examples could be education related costs, like you had mentioned earlier. Now, I know there's been a ton of debate around the cost benefit of going to college and getting a college degree. We all know that's mostly for the network and the resources. I don't have to give y'all a political lesson about why, certain things institutionally are the way that they are. But that being said, really extracting the resources that you need to create and leverage the utility from the situation. So all of us here had the wonderful privilege of attending Barnard College of Columbia University. There's so much that comes from that, right? I would think that is a sound investment, and really looking at like, okay, what do you value in your life that feels like wealth for you? Because I'm not going to tell people like this is, exactly what you need to aspire for, but yeah, and just in some looking at the debt, the sort of value that it'll add to your life and how you are going to act in accordance to make that worthwhile. Just some general practical things though, you really want to look for as low interest rates as when you're paying back that, I believe, I'm not sure if you were the one who mentioned that earlier, but I can't recall at the moment, but sorry, it was PJ, but off that interest really can leave you in a worse financial position than if you had never taken on that debt at all. Additionally, some creditors might offer like prepayment penalties, and that's something that you want to read over. So like, even if you are in the position where you're like, I took on this debt, I can actually pay it off before the interest rate goes up, but now they're trying to punish me for that reason. So those are just some general things that you should look over when it comes to taking on debt, using credit. But you have to start taking on debt in order to build credit. So really do not be afraid. And I think what I unfortunately see a lot of, especially when I was doing some coaching work with different folks, is that people had the money to make a certain purchase like a house, but the credit score might have been affected because they didn't have any sort of credit history. And unfortunately, it is still a very much prevalent system that is used in our society. So I think it's important to give yourself the option and opportunities.
Great. I really appreciate your perspective on that, Gianni. So, let's kind of switch gears again. As we think about thriving in periods of uncertainty, 2020 has definitely shown us that preparation is key, and being prepared is something that many of us probably wish we were more prepared before 2020 totally put the world upside on its head. So Caroline, I would love to hear from your perspective, being an expert in career transitions and career coaching. For those of us who are young alums and have graduated in the last 10 or so years, this might be the first period that we've ever experienced what it might be like to be furloughed or laid off, right? And kind of navigating that for the first times in our careers. So from your perspective, if anyone on the call has been furloughed or laid off and doesn't have sufficient savings to really feel like they're prepared, what are your best and what are your tips around those individuals' best and kind of less than stellar options for the short term and just staying afloat?
Yeah. So even though you might not like what the number says, that your bank account is lower than you want it to be, run those numbers, know for sure, what all of your expenses are and how long you have till things get really dire. You just want to have a realistic perspective around, are we talking a week, a month, a quarter, whatever it is. Because sometimes people will think they have more time than they have. They postpone their job search. Maybe they say that they want to relax, recover from the layoff, and then all of a sudden they're under the gun. So run the numbers, know what you need. And your job search becomes your full-time job, right? So if you have been laid off or furloughed, that 40 hours a week that you would be at your job is 40 hours a week that you can spend on your job search. And if you really have to land a job quickly, I would say that the fastest way to do that, and I think we know this intuitively, is not going to be sending out hundreds of resumes to a black hole where we don't know if people are going to call us back. The reality is that people hire people. And so the fastest way to get a job is through networking. It is through reaching out to people who already know, like, and trust you. So they can be your classmates from your alma mater. They can be former colleagues from your job. Former bosses might be able to bring you in for a consulting project, for some part-time work. People who already know, like, and trust you can leapfrog the hiring process. They can quicken the hiring process for you. They can put in a word to HR or to the hiring manager that will cut through, some of the other candidates that you're competing with. And so if time is of the essence when it comes to your job search, networking is really where it's at.
Nice. Thank you. Thank you for that. So, PJ, something that I feel like a lot of us as young alums are also thinking about is getting to a point where we might need to think about health insurance, especially in today's climate, right, where we're all living through a health pandemic. So as we think about preparedness and just some of the things that come up when there's moments of uncertainty, you mentioned having a strong foundation. So what are some ways that we can think about ensuring that we have that access to quality healthcare and insurance, even if we're in a position where maybe for the first time we're aging out of our parents' insurance, like me turning 26, or maybe we're losing coverage because of layoffs and just uncertainty in the job market. What's your advice there?
Well, I really want to talk about the layoffs first, because so many people, when they're laid off, they're offered COBRA or some type of insurance where they can then continue the insurance they had on the job, which often had really high max out of pockets, really high deductibles, and they're paying astronomically after you've been furloughed and you don't have any income. A lot of people don't know that through the Affordable Care Act, once you are laid off, you can have coverage immediately. Within the first 60 days after getting laid off, you qualify for what's called a special enrollment period, which means that you can enroll and you can then have coverage. If you were to enroll on the 29th of November, you have coverage on December 1st. It starts the first day of the month afterwards. And oftentimes people don't realize with Affordable Care Act that it provides provisions like all pre-existing health conditions are covered. You're able to enter your doctors and see which plans your doctors take, so you don't necessarily have to go for some doctor you don't know. You also, depending on states, there are 38 states that participate in healthcare.gov, and we had, for those who maybe it's been longer than 60 days, but it's 60 days since your COBRA ended, not 60 days necessarily since you lost your job. So when you look at that and you're basing it on your future income, not the past income, you can make less than $150,000 a year, depending on your household size, and still qualify for tax credits, cost sharing subsidies. And those tax credits don't affect your tax return. They are specifically reserved for healthcare. So if you don't use them, they stay in the pot in order to help other people who might need it. Oftentimes people don't realize that if you made $100,000 a year, then you lost your job and you're planning on making $0 right now, that is the income that you're actually basing it on. So say you're an adult and you have small children. Your children, because of that low income, might also qualify for your state's Medicaid or CHIP program. And a lot of times people think that, oh, that's for people who make that kind of income. But I would really encourage you to speak to an advisor or go to healthcare.gov and see what you qualify for and press the help button if you need help navigating the process. So I think for that perspective, I think that's very important because a lot of people just don't know that that option is available. And I think also with regard to small business owners, especially, they don't realize that if they can't afford or they're not mandated to have health coverage for their employees, that is something that they can say, hey, reach out to ACA and the Affordable Health Care Act in order to get coverage for you and your family if you're a 1099 worker or if you're self-employed with a small business and you don't do payroll, because you can only get group health insurance when you have payroll through your state and you're filing those employment taxes. So I think a lot of those are benefits and things that people don't think about with regard to healthcare, and that is the reason why that legislation was put in place to try to even the playing field, because so many people go bankrupt because of medical debt. When it looking at things like even exploring looking for plans, and the fact that say you have a plan at work and the maximum out of pocket is $15,000. That's what your job is offering. You can get something like a hospital indemnity plan that's for $15,000, which if you were to get sick, it pays you the cash immediately, and you can use that towards your max out of pocket in order to fill the gap, like gap insurance, similar to what you might have on a vehicle or on your home. And some of those plans are $30, $40, $50 a month, depending on your age and household size. So I think from that perspective, when we're talking about the challenging economic times, people really need to explore these other options and bundle offerings in order to suit their individual situation. And when it comes to just being on the job, you talked about protection for, thinking ahead. I mentioned earlier long-term care. A lot of times people don't realize that these are benefits that may even be available through their traditional life insurance plan. They may have something like you talk about term life, you have whole life, you also have a universal life type plan, which might offer what you call living benefits. So it's not like what you call your granddaddy's life insurance. You're talking about things that have provisions for cancer, heart attack, stroke, should you not be able to do 2 of 6 daily living activities, and those types of things where they will pay you out the benefit while you are here so that you can enjoy and mitigate some of those bills. So while you're young and healthy, this is the time to really explore these options where you can get, it's like buying a carton of eggs, right? You buy it by the unit. So with that, you can really explore these protection options for yourself, for your family, and suggest it to your loved ones to really fill that gap with regard to health insurance and coverage.
That was terrific. Thank you so much, PJ. I just want to remind everyone who's on the Zoom with us, if you have any questions, feel free to use the Q&A feature so that we can answer that question when we get to the Q&A portion of the event. So now let's talk about life transitions, right? Even in periods of uncertainty, life is still going on. There's still things, especially as alums of Barnard, we always have our sights on what is that next goal, right? So Gianni, you mentioned this a little bit earlier, but I would love to hear your perspective again as our young alum panelists. You mentioned switching roles and industries, even during this time of uncertainty, and how that's benefited you and you've invested in yourself in that way. So, I think the question for you is, how did you identify that opportunity, and what advice do you have for other fellow alums who might feel like, I'm ready to make that switch into a new industry and I don't really know how?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. So for me, I knew that I was coming up on the time where I would want to leave and transition from my job. And for context, I spent the past 4 years teaching elementary school, and I made the decision because I love children. And I thought it would be really strategic for me holistically, because education is one of the fields where you get time off, at least in this country. So it, I think around 8 weeks worth of time off per year. So I could travel, I could learn different skills. Like I took Arabic at the People's Forum for $300 for a term, you know, really allow me to get that time wealth and time freedom, which I think is really important. So I think when you are making any sort of decision about the work that you're going to do, how is it benefiting you holistically? So education really served that period of my life to help me reach toward those other visions of self. But I'm really excited to be moving into tech. And I was able to do that because I saved my money pretty aggressively while I was teaching. And it really hit me kind of the second year of full-time work, where I'm like, I honestly should have way more money saved. I actually had a friend who was another Barnard alum who was making around $42,000 a year. And we went for an apartment together, and it was only around 2 years of us graduating, and she had like over $20,000 of liquid savings in her account, in addition to contributing to her 403B because she worked for the AU. Mind you, this was a person who does not receive financial support from her family, and actually has been very financially independent for most of her life because of just identity challenges. So someone who I think out of necessity realized like, I need to be smart about my money. But at that point I was making around $20,000 more than her. And I was thinking like, whoa, like I don't have that saved. Like, what am I doing wrong? And it really made me see that certain things are very possible if you just take a moment to pause and reflect on your values, what you want for yourself, and become a little bit more organized. And it doesn't all have to happen at once, but then I started contributing to my 403B. So I was earning interest by putting my money into mutual funds, index funds, what have you. And that really paid off down the line because I ended up using some of that money to buy my first investment property, which is cash flowing and has appreciated considerably, has air rights. So like this one decision to automate a portion of my income, my pre-tax income, into a 403B helped me gain, I think I want to say I averaged like over 11% worth of growth in those 3 years. So that really helped make me feel comfortable because I have this nice little nest egg that I've been building up in addition to my personal saving skills. So I made it a point to save at least a year's worth of expenses so that I could comfortably walk away from a job. So I called it my FU fund, you know, because sometimes you just got to say, I'm good, actually, like, and I believe in myself. So that really helped. But something I really want to just put in your ear is the use of 0% interest free credit cards. And the reason why I say that is because that's been really instrumental to my journey as well. Because once you've been building your credit, you can really qualify for these 0% cards if you consolidate your debt and pay off some higher interest debt, or if you put yourself in a position like me where you have the money to kind of like put your expenses on these cards, but allow your money to keep earning interest in your respective accounts. So kind of using that 0% interest time period to front load your investing and your savings goals. So I love that, you know, so I have a few cards I don't have to pay back until, 18 months since I opened it up. And it allows me to maintain my liquidity, especially in this sort of financial climate, while earning interest on that liquidity, but also on those 0% interest cards so that I have money to pay them all off once that benefit or feature ends. So yeah, and that can really help folks out. A space that into a new space. And research, because you want to add those skills that are aligned with your value to whatever it is that you're putting yourself forward. And I think really making yourself like irreplaceable is something that I think is important.
That was awesome. Thank you, Gianni, for that. So, Caroline, I want to get to you right before we're about to wrap up, because I think a lot of us who are young alums and also in periods where we've been working full time for a few years, even in this year, I think a lot of us are even, as Gianni kind of mentioned, kind of thinking, well, maybe I want more money, and maybe I'm kind of comfortable where I'm at in terms of my company and my career, but I feel like I'm worth more than what I'm kind of earning right now. So what is your tip around this? I know you talk about this on your site, Costa Rica Fire, about earning more to accelerate your goals. So the question for you is, how do you approach a conversation at work around promotions and raises, even in times of uncertainty like right now?
Yeah, so I think there are a couple of things worth mentioning. First of all, reframe your thinking around negotiation. Companies appreciate when you negotiate, they respect good negotiators, they want you on their side of the table. And so, this notion of, I don't want to raise my hand and speak up because it might turn someone off, or it might, be off putting in some way, just get that out of your mind. So if you do this well, companies will really respect you for it. The second thing is that just because the general economy is in a recession doesn't say anything about your individual merits to getting a raise. So, for example, your industry might be doing well, your company might be doing well, your department might be doing well, and then finally, you might be doing spectacularly. So the world can be falling all around you, but if you're doing well and you have results and accomplishments to point to, that can make a really good case for asking for a raise. Make no mistake, employers are like you and I, wanting to get the best deal. We don't want to pay more than we have to. And so don't wait for your employer to say, you know what, I think it's been a while since we've adjusted your salary to market value. You have to know what your market value is. You really have to be paying attention, especially if you've been working in one place for a while. You might not have realized that your COLA increase, or maybe you haven't gotten increases in the last few years, certain industries that have been really flat. And all of a sudden, you're doing a lot more work and you haven't seen a salary increase in a while, and your compensation has really lagged behind. So that's up to you to really pay attention to what's happening in the market, and to not be afraid to ask, and to point to specific things that really are evidence of your value. So, right, your results, your accomplishments, not just the time that you were there, or that you'd like to get a raise, or that you need to get a raise to make ends meet. It's really about bottom line impact to the company.
Caroline, that was awesome. And thank you all. This was such a great conversation. We want to leave some time for Q&A because we have quite a few questions in the Q&A box, so that's really exciting. But I did just want to thank you all for these awesome nuggets of wisdom. So the first question I want to pose to PJ. The question is around, what are some good high yield savings accounts? You mentioned this as part of the financial foundation. So what are some good recommendations that you would suggest?
Definitely. Many credit unions are offering high yield savings. About a year ago, you would have been able to find 2.25, 2.5. In some cases, it's fluctuating now to around 1.85 to 2%. Capital One has a really great high yield savings, as well as American Express has a great high yield savings as well. The key is, whenever you look for that and you're using it for your emergency fund, you want to put it at least an arm's length away, so that you don't, when you're impulse shopping, be able to grab that card and swipe it. So it's always good to have it at a different bank that's not necessarily a transfer away, but also accessible. But definitely ask where you bank now. A lot of them do not have minimum requirements in order to deposit into them. So you can get started with as low as $10, $25, and then automate your money. Move $25, $50, $100 a week, a day, a month to that account in order to build.
That's awesome, PJ. Thank you. The next question, Carol, I want to pose to you. An alum wrote that in March, they lost their full-time nonprofit job, and after many months of job searching, they are now excitedly working 4 part-time jobs remotely. So the question is around, what's your advice in terms of striking a healthy balance between working, networking, and not working?
Yeah, I think that's a great question in the sense that clearly the person who asked it is aware that working in your job is not the same as working on your career, and you should be doing both. So you have these 4 part-time jobs, so that's great, but you also want to keep cultivating and nurturing that network, and you also want to be looking at what's next for you. How are you going to position these jobs into the rest of your career? And so the right balance is going to depend on, what else is going on right now. I would say that if you're new to these jobs, there's always some lead time before you can feel comfortable in a job. So I would give it at least 90 days to get comfortable in all your jobs, and you can let yourself off the hook a little bit about the networking and about all the other things. But then after you're comfortable, yeah, absolutely. Start reaching out to people, continue those connections, start thinking about, are these jobs going to lead to ideally what I want to do in my career? And always reserve, even if it's just a couple of hours a week, to do something towards your broader career, researching companies, updating your LinkedIn profile or your resume, talking to people, something that is not related to your day-to-day job.
Awesome. Okay, thank you. Gianni, this next question is for you. I know you're going to have a great take on it. How can you build a personal brand when bragging about your accomplishments makes you deeply uncomfortable? What's the balance between furthering your career and staying true to yourself and authentic?
Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of people can relate to, especially,
Yep.
I'm not sure the gender of that person, but a lot of women or femme presenting folks really struggle with embodying their power and their impact. So I think it really starts with starting to get comfortable saying that to yourself. There are some small exercises you can do, like mirror work, writing out affirmations about yourself and your value, and really accepting those things as true. Because if you expect anyone to believe it, you have to believe it yourself. And of course, like, people are human too, so they recognize that, and no one expects you to be perfect. So I think also removing that sort of standard, and knowing that what's most perfect is you really just authentically and powerfully putting your best foot forward to embody who you are and who you're meant to be, and the impact that you're meant to have with this brand that you're creating. So I think that's a way to really help get yourself comfortable with bragging about yourself. Just really forcing yourself to acknowledge your accomplishments. And something really small that could be helpful at work is creating a done list. So it's kind of like taking advantage of psychology to help really encourage the behavior and the commitment to the work. So the more things that you're adding to your done list can just give a little boost. And then you can really see, like, oh, like, I got this, right? And I think it also makes it a little bit objective enough so you can get more comfortable with praising yourself for the work and the and efforts that you're doing. So yeah.
Thank you, Gianni. This next question I would love to hear from everyone. It's a pretty quick question. Is there a budgeting app that each of you would recommend as your favorite? This alum is asking because it's sometimes hard to figure out monthly expenses that may vary month to month. Anyone want to start?
One of my favorites.
Oh, okay.
Who's first? Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead, Gianni.
Funnily enough, I do not use a budgeting app. I really enjoy pen and paper. I like doing the math myself. For me, because I have such a spiritual relationship with money, I think really picking up that pen and paper and writing it out helps just work with the way that I have my sort of money dates, where I'm reflecting upon my money, where I'm giving it each dollar a job, or what have you. My general preference though, because I don't use a budgeting app and because I do use pen and paper, is I prefer to front load my savings. So that means that whatever my savings goal is, I'm hitting that first. Then I'm allocating the rest of my money toward my primary expenses and the other things thereafter. So, yep. I don't know if there are any other people who are like, I don't really want to use an app, because it becomes a little bit overwhelming for me.
Mhm. Well, for
PJ, what
me,
about you?
as a business owner, I tend to use a lot of the QuickBooks products. I own, multiple businesses. I'm a big fan of diverse, multiple streams of income. So I use QuickBooks for small businesses as well as TurboTax when it's time to file. And then I use Mint as a personal budgeting app because it speaks to there. All my transactions are downloaded. And for me, I use it because I like to tag my expenses as I spend. So that way, when it comes time to pushing them all into my IRS tax filing at the end of the year, those categories are already predetermined. So if you swipe at Starbucks or wherever you swipe, to be able to just tag it for that expense or for that business, or whether it's personal, I feel like for me, it's great to be able to do that because it's a lot less headache at the end of the year when you're tallying up those expenses and looking for those write-offs.
Yeah, I don't use apps. I use Excel, and I don't budget, I track. So I don't try to project into the future because I think I know that I would just lie or overestimate or underestimate. It's just so easy to guess wrong. So I use Excel for both tracking my money and tracking my time. I've tracked my time in half-hour increments. I track all of my spending. And for both of those things, I apply, and this is why I love Excel, because you can put whatever columns and fields you want. I'll attach it to what I call a client. So I'll say, like, what is this expense for? It's either for one of my businesses, or it's for one of my kids or the whole family, or it's, for me, or it's health or whatever it is. And then I can see in real time, and I can look back over a year and say, okay, this is how much I spent. I might not like it and I might wish it were otherwise, but the reality is this is how much I spent eating out, and et cetera, et cetera.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. PJ, another question for you. For alums who are self-employed and may have been drastically affected by COVID-19, what types of resources would you recommend in terms of recovering financial stability?
Definitely, a lot of people were afraid felt to file for unemployment. They felt like there were going to be tax ramifications as well. A lot of people were thinking about opening a business. So now is kind of the time to really embrace that and some of the benefits and things that are happening with the Small Business Administration. The local office is a great resource in your city. There are lots of incentives and grants that are there. Definitely, as I mentioned earlier, you want to really jump into open enrollment, which opened for healthcare, which was November 1st, and it ends on December 15th is the closing date for open enrollment. So if you don't have health insurance, you want to jump on that so that it takes coverage as of January 1st for you and your family. You also want to think about your network. We have, Bold, Beautiful Alumni, Barnard Alumni, the Facebook group. That's one of the unofficial Facebook groups of Barnard, but there's really great networking opportunities. And we've been seeing lots of folks who post looking for positions, internships, jobs there, and other alums are actually reaching out, and also beyond Barnard. I think career development here at Barnard has been doing some amazing things in the virtual space in order to provide a lot of support and a lot of connecting. So I definitely would encourage us to use our Barnard resources because we don't often use them enough.
That's great. Thank you. Gianni, I want to pose this next question to you because I remember you having a post about this on Instagram, I think. But what are some of your thoughts around more ethical investing platforms or women-led investment funds that you can recommend?
Mm-hmm. So I can't remember all the tickers off the top of my head, but there are some great updated lists available through the Yahoo Finance. So if you just Google some socially responsible index funds, socially responsible ETFs, you can really get a full financial breakdown of the different funds. and indexes and how they're performing in the stock market as well. So you get a sense of their core values and see how they align with your core values and decide, is this going to be a good financial investment for me as far as my position in the market? Overall, I will say that when you're operating in a predominantly capitalist framework, I'm not sure if there's a such thing as ethical profit, to be honest. And you have to decide how you feel about that. But for me, I think, especially as a Black woman and a Black queer woman at that, I think it's really important for me to leverage the systems that I have available to me as we continue to problematize them and think about what are some sustainable alternatives that are going to meet us in the future, that we're going to create for the future. So if you do operate in that sort of vein, go ahead and invest in the stock market. Use those profits to invest in different organizations and what have you that are creating the vision that you want to see actualized. So my approach is to, get those profits and donate high as much as I can. And then there's also benefits for that as well, right? There are tax write-offs, especially if you do own a few businesses or LLCs, which I definitely and highly encourage for folks to, again, take advantage of that sort of resource when it comes to, being living in America, being an American citizen. If you are, even if you're not, just getting a business, getting an LLC can really help as far on that front.
Thanks, Gianni. There are so many questions, but I'm just going to pick one last one and direct it to you, Caroline. Quite a few people are kind of asking the same variation of a question around how much should folks be allocating from their salary to savings? Like, what's a good benchmark and what's a good fraction of your salary or your main income to put towards savings?
So here's the thing. I mean, at the end of the day, how much you save, how aggressively you invest or not, all of that stuff depends on your personal goals. If you have a goal to start a business in 10 years, you might want to be saving a lot more money than you think because you want to build up that dream fund. If you're trying to retire early, if you're trying to buy a house. So there isn't really a rule of thumb. I get a lot of questions around what's the best interview answer for XYZ? What's the best, fill in the blank? And there is no best. These are very personal decisions about your values, interests, and priorities. I would say as much as possible. Maybe that's the percentage that I would save in this environment.
Awesome. Thank you. And we're just out of time, but I want to allow each of you to kind of let us know, any alums who are on the call and want to work with you or follow your journeys, how can we stay in contact and stay connected with you? Caroline, do you want to start?
Sure. So I have a group coaching program that is 6 months long, and you can get all the details at dreamcareerclub.com. And that's the best way, really, to then find your way around my site. And there are a lot of free resources on there, blog articles, mini courses, things like that. So you can start with those too.
Awesome. Gianni, what about you?
Yeah, so definitely add me on LinkedIn. Feel free to chat and connect with me, especially if you're interested in becoming a software engineer. I can offer some insight and connections and resources around that, or just want to talk about tech in general. And as far as personal finance information specifically, I'll drop my email in the chat so folks can access it. But it's for my personal finance brand First Gen Money Musings at gmail.com. So I'll just make sure to type that out as well.
And PJ, what about you?
Definitely. You can find me at moneyworksfinancial.com. All things, book an appointment with me. I offer free complimentary consultations. I'm also offering a free download of an amazing book that you can get there. I'll put that in the chat. Also on social media, PJ Sands. You can follow me as well on LinkedIn. Definitely, I'll put the coupon code. So anyone that wants to download the digital PDF, or if they want to reach out to get a free workbook, they can do so at moneyworksfinancial.com. I'll put it in the chat as well.
That sounds great. Thanks, PJ. And I'll say to anyone who's on Instagram, you can follow me at fly.nance. That's FLY.NANCED. So I want to thank everyone for sharing your evening with us. And thank you to our incredible panelists, our fellow Barnard alums who joined us tonight and shared their insights on this important and timely topic. Thank you. And please remember to take care of yourselves and be well. Have a good one.